I found out my family was betting on my failure at my uncle's 50th birthday party. Not subtly. Not whispered in a corner. Out loud, in the living room, while I was getting a beer from the kitchen. Uncle Rick's voice carried through the house. All right, final bets. Who's going broke by 40? We've got Alex at 5-1 odds. Laughter. Lots of it. I stood there, hand on the fridge door, thinking I'd misheard. Then my cousin Jake's voice. I'll put 200 on still renting at 40. That's a safe bet. My dad. I'm going 300 on never gets a real job. Freelancing doesn't count, right, Rick? Definitely doesn't count. Uncle Rick laughed. Mike, you're in the pool. I walked into the living room holding my unopened beer. About 15 people sat around Rick's massive leather sectional. The one he'd bragged cost $8,000 at Thanksgiving. On the coffee table sat a yellow legal pad. Names down the left side. Dollar amounts down the right. Categories across the top. Uncle Rick saw me and didn't even flinch. Just grinned bigger. Alex! Perfect timing. We're making predictions. Totally in good fun. I looked at the pad. My name was there. Third from the top. Next to it. Broke by $4,500, Rick, still renting $200, Jake, career failure $300, Mike. My dad. My dad had bet $300 that I'd be a career failure. It's just jokes, Rick said, seeing my face. We're all rooting for you, kid. But you gotta admit, the odds aren't great. Jake laughed. Come on, cuz. It's funny. Don't be sensitive. I looked around the room. My aunts. My uncles. Cousins I'd grown up with. All watching to see how I'd react. My mom sat in the corner, looking uncomfortable but silent. Only Grandma Helen wasn't laughing. She sat in her chair by the window, shaking her head. I think this is cruel, she said quietly. It's tradition, Rick said. We did this for Jake's 30th. Remember? We bet on whether he'd finish his MBA. He proved us wrong. That's different, Jake said. That was motivational. So is this. Rick gestured at the pad. Alex, prove us wrong. We'd love to lose this money. I stood there, beer in hand, looking at my name. At the dollar amounts. At my family casually gambling on my failure. You know what? I said. I need to grab something from my car. I walked out. Got my phone. Came back. Nobody had moved. They'd gone back to chatting, the betting pad still on the table. I took 4 photos. Different angles. Made sure every name was visible. Every dollar amount. Every cruel category. Rick noticed. What are you doing? Documenting. Documenting what? This. All of it. For later. I grabbed my jacket from the hall closet. My mom finally stood. Alex, honey, don't leave like this. Like what? I'm just going home. They didn't mean anything by it. Mom, Dad bet $300 that I'll be a career failure. Rick bet $500 that I'll be broke. That's not nothing. Rick came into the hallway. Kid, you're overreacting. It's a joke. Do you have a betting pool about Jake failing? About anyone else? Silence. Yeah. That's what I thought. My dad appeared behind Rick. Don't be dramatic. This is family. We're allowed to tease. I turned back. Looked at this man who'd told me at 18 that computer programming wasn't a real career path. Teasing is one thing, I said. Betting money on my failure is something else. Rick crossed his arms. You know what your problem is, Alex? You don't have any drive. Any ambition. You're 30 years old making what, $40,000 a year? Doing freelance work in your apartment? We're trying to wake you up. By betting I'll fail? By showing you what path you're on if you don't change. I almost laughed. You want to know something, Rick? In 10 years, we'll see who made the better choices. Is that a threat? No. It's a promise. I left. Got in my car, a 2011 Honda Civic with a crack in the windshield and a bumper held on with zip ties. I sat there for a minute, hands shaking, looking at the photos on my phone. Then I did something I should have done years ago. I opened a new note and wrote, "Proved them all wrong. Every single one." I drove back to my apartment. Fourth floor walk up, no elevator, $950 a month for 450 square feet. My furniture was mostly Craigslist finds. My TV was 7 years old. This was the life they were betting against. I sat on my sagging couch and opened my laptop. Here's what they didn't know: I wasn't lazy. I wasn't unmotivated. I was quietly building something they couldn't see. For the last 8 months, I'd been working on a side project. A project management tool for freelancers like me who couldn't afford fancy enterprise software but needed something better than spreadsheets. I'd been coding at nights and weekends, testing it with freelancer friends, getting feedback. It wasn't ready yet, but it was mine. That night, I stayed up until 4 a.m. working on it. Not because I was angry, though I was, but because Rick's words had lit something. No drive. No ambition. I'd show him drive. Next morning, I texted my mom. "I need space from family events for a while." She called immediately. I let it go to voicemail. Her message: "Honey, please don't do this. Rick feels terrible. He was drinking. Just come to Sunday dinner." Rick feels terrible. Not, Rick was wrong. Just, he was drinking. I deleted it. Dad texted, "This is childish. Family doesn't hold grudges." Jake in the group chat: "Alex, dude, it was just for laughs. Don't be that guy." I muted the chat. Only Grandma Helen called. I answered. "Alex, sweetheart. I'm sorry about yesterday. That was wrong." "Thanks, Grandma. I didn't participate in that pool. I want you to know that." "I know. I saw. When you succeed, and you will, I want a front row seat." "Deal." I set the betting pool photo as my phone wallpaper. Not to wallow. To remember. Every morning when I unlocked my phone, I'd see it. My family's bet that I'd fail. And every morning, I'd choose to prove them wrong. The next 3 months were brutal. I kept freelancing, needed rent money, but cut everything else. No going out. Ramen became a food group. Every spare hour went into my project. I named it Task Flow. My friend Devin was the first real test. He was a freelance designer, perpetually drowning in client work. "Dude," he said, clicking through the interface, "this is clean. Really clean. You think it's useful? I'd pay for this right now." That stopped me. "You would? $20 a month, easy. For something that actually works? $20 a month. From one person. That was something." I launched TaskFlow on a Tuesday. Posted it on Product Hunt. Dropped it in freelancer forums. No budget for ads. No fancy marketing. Just, I built this because I needed it. Maybe you do too. First day, 3 signups. 2 were friends being nice. 1 was a stranger. Second day, 12 signups. Third day, 8. By the end of the first week, 47 users. Almost all paying $20 monthly. That was $940 per month. Actual money from strangers who found value in something I'd built. Rick had bet $500 I'd be broke by 40. I was making $940 monthly from a side project I'd built, while my family laughed. I took a screenshot of the Stripe dashboard. Put it in a folder labeled Progress, right next to the betting pool photos. By month 3, TaskFlow had 220 users. $4,400 monthly revenue. By month 6, I made a decision that would have made my family lose their minds. I quit freelancing. Went full-time on TaskFlow. My mom called that month. "Haven't seen you at Sunday dinners. Is everything okay?" "Everything's great, Mom." "Are you still upset about Rick's party?" "Still upset. Like it was minor." "I'm not upset. I'm just busy." "Busy with what?" "Projects." "Well, when you have time, come visit." I didn't visit. Instead, I worked 16-hour days. Adding features. Talking to users. By year 1, 800 paying users. $16,000 monthly revenue. After expenses, I was netting $12,000 per month. More than triple my freelancing income. I moved to a better apartment. Bought a reliable car. Small upgrades. Nothing flashy. But earned. I looked at that betting pool photo every morning. And smiled. Because I was winning. Year 2 was when everything exploded. January, 1,000 users. March, 2,000. June, 4,500 paying users. $90,000 monthly revenue. I hired my first employee. Then my second. Rented office space. Then in August, an email I almost ignored. A larger company wanted to talk acquisition. The meeting was straightforward. Their CEO, Jennifer. We've been tracking your growth. You've carved out a niche we can't reach. Freelancers love you. We'd like to buy Task Flow. I kept my face neutral. What kind of offer? 2.5 million. Half up front, half over 2 years as you hit milestones. I nodded like I heard numbers like that every day. Can I think about it? Take a week. I called Devin. They offered 2.5 million. What? That's life-changing money. It was. Generational wealth. Never worrying about rent again. Proof. We negotiated for 2 weeks. Ended up at $2. 7 million with better terms. The day the contracts were signed, I watched them wire $1. 35 million into my account. Mine. I walked out and stood on the sidewalk. 33 years old. Self-made millionaire. Built without my family's help. Or knowledge. I pulled out my phone. Looked at the betting pool photo one last time. Rick had bet I'd be broke by 40. Dad had bet I'd be a career failure. Now it was time to collect. I didn't tell anyone about the acquisition for 2 weeks. The wire transfer sat in my account like proof of a different life. $1. 35 million. Real money that meant I'd never worry about rent again. Devin was the first person I told in person. How does it feel? He asked. Weird. Like I'm waiting for someone to take it back. That's not going to happen. You earned this. I keep thinking about that party. Rick saying I had no ambition. Rick's an idiot. Yeah, but on paper, I was exactly what they thought. 40,000, shitty apartment, dying car. On paper, Devin said. But you were building something they couldn't see. The transition was smooth. I stayed on managing Task Flow with their bigger team. Moved to a nice condo. Bought a car that didn't make concerning noises. Small changes. But each one felt like shedding skin. My phone stayed mostly silent from family. 3 years of minimal contact had become normal. Occasional text from Mom. Sporadic message from Jake. They looked happy on social media. Complete. Like my absence barely mattered. That was fine. I was building my own life. Then in October, Grandma Helen called. I'm having a small birthday dinner next week. Would you come? I miss my grandson. I hesitated. 3 years of avoiding family. Grandma, I don't know. Please. I'm 82. I won't be around forever. Okay. I'll come. The dinner was at Grandma's favorite Italian place. Private room. The usual suspects, Mom, Dad, Amy, Jake, their spouses. And Rick. He saw me first. Alex? Wow, stranger. Didn't think you'd show. Grandma invited me. Mom hugged me. You look different. Good different. The evening started awkwardly. Small talk. I ate my pasta and listened. Then Rick, 3 glasses of wine in, leaned back. So Alex, what have you been up to? Still doing the freelance thing? Everyone watched. Not exactly, I said. Finally get a real job? I sold my company. Rick laughed. Your company? Come on. Task Flow. Project management software. Sold it in August. The laughter died. Wait, you're serious? Yeah. Jake leaned forward. You had a company? Since when? 3 years. Built it from scratch. Got acquired. Dad set down his fork. How much? A few thousand? I could have lied. Could have downplayed. But I was done shrinking. 2.7 million. The table went silent. Rick's face went red. You're lying. I pulled out my phone. Showed him the acquisition agreement. The wire transfer. He stared. This is how I built something people needed. Worked on it for 3 years while you thought I was failing. Jake looked stunned. That's real money. Dad stared at me like he'd never seen me before. You never said anything. Would you have believed me? He didn't answer. 3 years ago, at Rick's party, you bet money I'd be a career failure. All of you made bets about how I'd fail. Mom's face went pale. Alex, that was a joke? I looked at Rick. You bet 500 I'd be broke by 40. Said I had no drive. No ambition. Rick's jaw clenched. I was trying to motivate you. By publicly humiliating me? I have the photos. I pulled them up. The yellow legal pad. Every name. Every amount. I took screenshots. Looked at them every morning for 3 years. I showed them. Grandma Helen spoke up. I told all of you that night it was cruel. Grandma was the only one who didn't participate. I said. Mom was crying. We didn't mean. You meant exactly what you did. You thought I was a failure. And when I stopped showing up, none of you cared enough to check on me. Dad's voice was quiet. What were you doing all this time? Building. Working. Proving you wrong. Every single day. Rick stood. So you're here to gloat? No. I'm here because Grandma asked. She actually cares about me. The rest of you? I don't need your approval anymore. That's petty, Jake said. You know what's petty? Betting money your cousin will fail. Then acting shocked when he doesn't want to be around. Grandma walked me to my car. I'm proud of you. Not for the money. For building something on your own terms. Thanks, Grandma. What happens now? I don't know. But it's on my terms. The next few weeks were quiet. One text from Mom. A message from Jake saying, that was intense. I didn't respond. Then in December my phone rang. Unknown number. Alex? It's Rick. I waited. Look, I want to apologize. For the party. For everything. Okay. That's it. What do you want me to say, Rick? I don't know. I was an asshole. Yeah. You were. Can we start over? The successful me is the same person as the broke me. You just couldn't see it. I know. I'm sorry. I'll think about it. I said. We hung up. I thought about second chances. About whether people could change. The answer wasn't clear yet. But I had time. Because I wasn't waiting for their approval anymore. Christmas came. Mom wanted me at their house. Dad called. You're still our son. Still family. Am I? Because for 3 years, none of you noticed I was gone. Just think about it. I thought about it. About pretending everything was fine. Then I called Grandma. What if you came to my place for Christmas? Just you and me. They'll be upset. I want to spend it with someone who actually cared about me when it mattered. All right, sweetheart. Christmas Day, I cooked for Grandma. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes. She brought pie. We ate. Talked. Laughed. You remind me of your grandfather, she said. Quiet. People thought he was simple. But he built a business from nothing. I wish I'd known him better. He would have been proud. Not for the money. For the backbone. My phone buzzed throughout the day. Mom. Amy. Rick. I didn't answer. This was my Christmas. With someone who'd earned it. The next morning, my phone rang early. Is this Alex? Official-sounding voice. Yeah, who's this? David Chen. Venture capital firm. We've been following your career. Jennifer mentioned you might be looking for your next project. I sat up. I'm listening. We're looking for technical founders for a new accelerator. People who've built and exited. Interested? Absolutely. We talked for 20 minutes. About opportunities. About building new companies. About mentoring. When I hung up, I was smiling. This was just the beginning. Not just of a new business, but of a life I'd built on my own terms, where the only bet that mattered was the one I'd made on myself. And I'd won. January came in brittle and bright. The city sounded like metal, snowplows, salt crunching under tires, radiators clanking in old pipes. I slept like a stone and woke up before the sun anyway, a habit I couldn't shake even with the cushion in my bank account. The accelerator talked about vesting schedules and founder dinners. I talked about roadmaps and the quiet satisfaction of a working cron job. I kept my circle small. Devon, a handful of engineers I met through the acquisition, Grandma. Some mornings I scrolled old photos and saw a version of me with hollow eyes and a cracked windshield and felt a private tenderness for him. He built the bridge I walked across. In late February my phone rang. Unknown number. The hour read 7:41 a.m. I let it buzz once, twice, then answered. Alex? It's Rick. I said nothing at first. The last time he'd called, his apology had sounded like someone reading lines at a tryout. Morning, I said. He exhaled. Listen. I wouldn't call like this, but I'm in a situation. Of course he was. The timbre in his voice wasn't pride swallowed. It was hunger dressed up as urgency. I leaned against the counter. What kind of situation? You know my shop. We do metal components, mid-batch runs for regional suppliers. The last year's been a mess. Overseas competition, delays, raw material spikes. 2 big clients pushed payment 90 days, then canceled altogether when their OEM moved production. Bank called our line. Payroll's due Friday. There it was, the specific cold of numbers, the way business problems become weather. You can't argue with a bank that has already decided it's winter. And? I asked. He cleared his throat. I need a bridge. Short term. 200 grand would cover payroll and utilities while we renegotiate and close a purchase order that's illegal. I'll pay interest. We'll paper it. I'm not asking for charity. 200,000. The number didn't have the power over me it once would have. But it still had weight. You called a venture firm before you called me? I said. I called everyone. He said, honest in a way he maybe couldn't help. They don't do turnarounds, their word. We're too old, too manufacturing, too not SAS. He tried a laugh that sounded like a cough. You're the only one in the family with money. You're the only one who can actually help. I could see him as he talked, the leather sectional, the granite counters, the framed photo of him at a trade show gripping hands with a congressman. I pictured the yellow legal pad, the columns neat and smug. My name, third from the top. Send me your financials, I said. He blinked through the phone. You'll consider it? I'll look, I said and hung up. He sent them within the hour. A profit and loss that told a story in slumping lines. Aging receivables. A note about a machine that needed a spindle replacement and a clause in their insurance that wouldn't cover it because of a maintenance interval blown by 1 week. A letter from the bank terminating the revolving credit agreement. His CFO's email subject line. Breathing room. I poured coffee, printed the files, and laid them on the kitchen table in a grid. I wasn't an expert in turnarounds, but the math didn't require one. Even if the illegal purchase order closed, it wouldn't save them fast enough without cutting costs that were mostly people. My phone buzzed. Rick again. You see the PO? He said. It's real. We can cover you with that receivable in 60 days. Receivables that old are worth half on a good day. I said. Your margins on mid-batch runs are thin. Your unit economics died when your inputs shifted. You don't need a bridge, you need a different business. He was quiet. Then, are you saying no? I moved a printed page, aligning edges that didn't want to align. I'm saying you don't need a cousin with a check. You need Chapter 11 counsel. He inhaled sharply. Come on, man. Family. There it was. The word he had trimmed to fit his needs. Family, I repeated softly. I opened photos. The yellow legal pad glowed on my screen, inked like a wound. Rick, I said, I have something for you. What? I texted him the photo. Then another. 4 angles. Every name. Every amount. The category written in block letters like a headline. Broke by 40. My name. His bet. I typed a caption beneath the last image. Bad bet. Good luck. I hit send and set the phone face down. For a minute the apartment was very still. The refrigerator clicked on. Outside, a delivery truck sighed. When the phone buzzed again, I didn't flip it. I rinsed my mug. I opened my laptop. I wrote a paragraph of a proposal for the accelerator's first cohort. When I finally looked, there were 3 messages. Please. You don't mean that. We were joking. I put the phone back down and went back to work. Rick's company filed within 3 weeks. The headline in the local business journal was bloodless the way headlines are. Regional manufacturer pursues reorganization amid industry headwinds. In the article, a photo of Rick stood beside a late-line milling machine like a retired quarterback beside a trophy. The copy mentioned global competition and supply chain disruptions and the need to innovate. It did not mention betting pools. Mom called the next evening. I let it go to voicemail, then listened with my thumb hovering over delete. Alex, he's your uncle. He's having a hard time. Your father says you refused to help. After everything. She paused. After everything you've been given. Given. The word landed wrong in my ribcage. Grandma would never have said it like that. She would have said, after everything you've earned. I called her instead. You saw the article? I asked. I did, she said. I also saw the way you've been standing up straight lately. I laughed quietly. I told him no. I figured, she said. Sometimes no is not cruelty. It's the fence that keeps the wolves out. We talked about her tomatoes under grow lights in the spare bedroom and the neighbor who insisted salting sidewalks was a conspiracy. When I hung up, my chest had a knotted. The family thread ignited over the next few days. Jake posted a half-finished thought about loyalty and deleted it. My sister Amy texted privately. You okay? Mom is. Mom. I told her I was fine, that I was cooking more, that I had learned to make a decent omelet. She sent a heart. Meanwhile, work moved like a river in spring. The accelerator filled. Founders with hungry eyes came through our doors and told us versions of the same story. I've been building something everyone says is small until suddenly it isn't. I told them about cron jobs and about error budgets and about the photo I'd looked at every morning for 1,000 days. I learned to keep the story short. I learned to let the useful part be the part about building anyway. One night I dreamed of the legal pad and woke at 3:12 a.m. I padded to the window and watched snow fall beneath a streetlight that flickered at the edge of its own patience. In the glass, I caught my reflection. He looked, finally, like someone who could be the main character in his own life. The next afternoon, I ran into Dad by accident, which is a funny word for something that felt, on some level, like gravity doing slow, inevitable work. I was leaving a coffee shop. He was entering, tugging at a scarf he'd owned since my junior year of high school. We both froze. Then he smiled with his mouth and not his eyes. Alex. Hey, Dad. We did the awkward dance of humans remembering choreography they'd never learned. He gestured to a table. I followed, less to be agreeable and more to see if I could do this without my pulse sprinting. He ordered black coffee. I ordered tea I wouldn't finish. We stared at the little tent sign advertising a pastry and pretended the company of flaky dough could make us less breakable. I read about Rick, he said. Me too. You could have helped. I set the tea down. You know his numbers don't work. He fidgeted with the cuff of his jacket. Family helps anyway. Family also bets $300 their son will be a career failure. I said calmly. Family stays quiet while the room laughs. He flinched like I'd pushed him with 2 fingers. I was wrong. I didn't say yes or finally or you were. I let the silence catch its breath. He tried again. I didn't understand what you were building. You didn't have to. I said. You just had to not humiliate me. We both looked down. A long minute walked by. When it was far enough away, he said, I'm sorry. 2 words. I'd imagined them in 100 voices. The one he used was small and real. It wasn't enough to rearrange the past, but it was enough to set a pin in the map. Thanks, I said. He swallowed. Your grandmother's not feeling great, he added, like sorrow needed a chaperone. She won't tell anyone. You know how she is. I'll go, I said. Tell her I said. He stopped. No. I'll tell her myself. We paid separately. On the sidewalk, the light had turned the color of old pewter. He hugged me, then let go first. As he walked away, I could see the outline of the man who had taught me to ride a bike and the outline of the man who had circled the dollar figure next to the words. Career failure. People contain multitudes. Sometimes they even contain apologies. Grandma's apartment smelled like lemon oil in the bingo hall. A ceramic cardinal sat on the sill like a sentry. She opened the door before I knocked twice. There's my favorite startup, she said, and I laughed and kissed her papery cheek. We ate soup at her tiny table and talked about nothing important. When the bowls were empty, she reached across and took my hand. You don't have to be the one who absorbs everyone's lesson, she said. I frowned. What do you mean? You're doing what men in this family have always done, take hurt and turn it into work. It's a fine alchemy. It buys houses and pays for braces. But don't let the past choose the size of your future. I looked at her small, fierce face. I don't know how to do anything else. You do, she said. You just forgot. You liked drawing when you were little. You copied the Sunday comics with a seriousness that made me leave the room. I haven't drawn in years. So draw, she said. Not to prove. To learn what you're like when you're not responding. I bought a cheap sketchbook on the way home and was terrible for 12 pages. Then something unclenched, and the pencil started making choices my hand respected. It was small and private and felt like finding a room in a house you thought only had 4. March thickened into April. The accelerator launched. 2 of our teams shipped products that were obviously going to move the air. I said little. I answered pointed questions. I remembered how to listen until someone else heard themselves. Rick texted once, the sort of message that apologizes without touching the thing it did. No hard feelings. I stared at it and thought about how people talk like that when the feelings were never soft to begin with. I didn't reply. On a Sunday, Mom called while I was drawing a pair of hands. We're doing dinner next week for your father's birthday, she said. It would mean a lot if you came. To her credit, she didn't add please. She'd stopped pleading and started letting air into the space between us. It's hard to inflate a balloon that someone else is pinching. I'll come, I said. She exhaled her relief into the phone like a secret. At dinner, Rick wasn't there. His lawyer was. He explained Chapter 11 to my parents as if it were a parlor game. You keep the good dishes, you give away the broken ones, you convince the bank that chips are part of the pattern. Mom nodded too fast. Dad watched me when he thought I wouldn't notice. After cake, I took plates to the sink and felt a presence beside me. Amy. You're handling this freakishly well, she said. I draw now, I said deadpan. She laughed and bumped my hip. You should meet my friend Priya. She runs ops at an edtech that needs someone who's good at telling founders to calm down. You're gifted at that. I'll think about it. You always do, she said fond. We loaded the dishwasher with the choreography of people who had done it in silence for years. When I left, Dad hugged me again. It felt less like ceremony and more like practice. Summer came in a green rush. The accelerator held demo day in an old theater that still smelled like velvet. Founders in sneakers and conviction flashed their slides. Investors nodded the nod that means maybe. When it ended, I stood in the wings and watched our teams turn into something you could point at. The next morning, a letter arrived addressed by hand. I recognized Rick's slanted caps. Inside, a check for $1,000. For the bet, the note said. Interest not included. I can't afford it. There was a coffee ring on the corner. I set it on the table and stared at it a long time. It was exactly wrong and exactly right. Pay back for a thing that had been metaphor, interest-free in the only way that matters. $1,000 wasn't restitution. But it was a crack in the wall a person builds around their own worst day. I mailed it back with a sticky note. Keep it. Put it towards severance for whoever answers your phones. 2 weeks later, Rick called again. I almost didn't pick up, but some impulses deserve sunlight. I sold the house, he said without preamble. The leather couch went on Facebook Marketplace. A guy haggled me down $70 and I let him because I was too tired to explain value to a stranger. I surprised us both. I'm sorry. He cleared his throat. I got a job. Night shift supervisor at a distribution center. Imagine me in a reflective vest. I can imagine it, I said. I'm glad you're working. He was quiet. Then, you don't owe me anything. I know that now. But if you ever have a use for someone who knows how to make things move from point A to point B in any weather, well, I can do that. I thought of the founders in our cohort, their scrappy logistics, the way a pallet left in the wrong corner can cost a small company a week of runway. Send me your resume, I said. And be honest in it. No congressman photos. He laughed in a way that hurt. Deal. In August, Grandma went into the hospital for tests. If you've ever had a grandmother, you know that tests is a word made of fog. I sat by her bed while a machine blinked like a polite metronome. Draw me, she said. Now? Before my nose decides to try something experimental. I opened the sketchbook and tried to catch the intelligence in her eyes without being sentimental. When I showed her, she nodded once. That's me, she said, satisfied. She died 2 weeks later at dawn. The sun came up anyway, show off that it is. At the funeral, the family did what families do, carried casseroles into rooms, told stories in clusters, whispered about who had gained weight, who had lost it, who had not cried and what that meant. Rick stood by the coffee urn refilling cups like he could pour his penance. After the service, the lawyer read her will in a voice that had done this too many times to be meaningfully moved. She left me her cardinal, her recipe box, and a letter I didn't open until midnight. In it she wrote, "Do not spend your life answering a question someone else asked in a voice you didn't choose. Spend it asking better ones." I slept with the letter beside the bed like a lighthouse. Grief rearranges the furniture in a room you thought you knew in the dark. I went to work because work had corners. I cooked the recipes in Grandma's box one by one. I learned that her handwriting meant more garlic than this. In September, Jake texted, "We need to talk." I braced for a defense of the old ways. Instead, he asked to meet at a modest bar with good lighting. "I'm starting over," he said, chewing on a napkin because nerves need props. "The MBA taught me how to talk like I knew things. It didn't teach me how to actually know them." "What do you want to do?" I asked. "Small. Real. A service business that doesn't pretend to be a media company with a shop." He grinned sheepish. "I want to build backyard sheds." He waited for me to laugh. I didn't. He continued. "Custom. Local. Good materials. Transparent timelines. No $8,000 couches." I felt something unclench. There are 1,000 kinds of courage. One is deciding the word. Ambition can mean being excellent quietly. I can help you set up a schedule and a simple CRM and a cash flow model that won't kill you, I said. In return, you'll build me a shed with a window that makes morning look like a promise. He blinked fast. Deal. We shook hands like men in old movies who remember the stakes. At home that night, I took the photo of the legal pad off my lock screen for the first time in 3 years and 9 months. I didn't delete it. I moved it to an album called Artifacts. There's a difference between a scar and a map. 2 weeks later, the Accelerator's partners asked me to keynote our next event. "Tell the story," they said. "The one about building anyway." On stage, I didn't talk about the acquisition or the number that had changed my life. I talked about the morning routine of ordinary work. I talked about how humiliation infiltrates a person's codebase and how, if you're not careful, you'll ship a whole version of yourself just to prove someone wrong who isn't even watching. I said, "Build from love when you can. When you can't, build from something steadier than revenge. Revenge is rocket fuel. It will get you off the ground. It will not land the plane." After, a woman in a thrifted blazer said, "I didn't know how to articulate that." I've been sprinting for a ghost. I think I'll slow down. I told her slowing down is a kind of speed that lasts longer. Rick didn't come to the event. He sent a text the next day. Got promoted. Day shift. Less money. More sleep. I thumbs-upped it like a middle-aged man and then called him like a better one. Proud of you, I said. You are? Yes, I said. Because you stopped pretending the map was the territory. He was quiet. Then, I printed your text. The bad bet one. It sits by my keys. Not as punishment. As a reminder about the math of words. Words have math. He'd learned that late. But he'd learned. Winter rolled back in with its 1,000 shades of gray. On the anniversary of TaskFlow's acquisition, Jennifer sent a bottle of champagne with a note that said simply, "Still the right bet." I opened it with Devon on the fire escape like we were still 22 and invincible. We weren't. We were better, breakable, and deliberate. My shed arrived in March. Jake and a crew of 2 put it up in a day with the noiseless competence of people who respect wood. The window did make morning look like a promise. I set my desk by it and hung Grandma's cardinal above the frame. On the shelf sat her recipe box and the sketch I'd made of her in the hospital, framed cheaply and perfectly. Sometimes I sat out there and drew. Sometimes I wrote curriculum for the accelerator and answered emails with the cadence of someone who understands that not every ping is a crisis. Sometimes I did nothing but watch the light travel across the floorboards like a pilgrim. Family dinners became bearable. Then occupied. Then occasionally good. Mom learned to ask questions that weren't exams. Dad started sending me links to articles about things he didn't understand with the subject line. Explain like I'm me. We never said the words legal pad out loud. But we lived like we had, and sometimes that's enough. On my 35th birthday, a small box arrived without a return address. Inside, the yellow legal pad, or what was left of it. The first page torn away, the cardboard backing dented with old ink. A note clipped to the top. Bad bet. Good lesson. R. I took it to the shed and set it on the shelf beside artifacts. I stood there a long time, hand on the spine of a ghost that had been turning pages in me for years. Here is the truth no one tells you about winning. It doesn't feel like the fireworks. It feels like making coffee in a kitchen you chose, calling your grandmother on a Sunday, helping a cousin build a shed without once mentioning wood in a metaphorical tone. Here is the other truth. I did send the screenshot. I wrote bad bet. Good luck. People will call that petty. People who have never had to become their own weather always think an umbrella is an attitude problem. I keep the screenshot. Not on my lock screen, not in my pocket like a saint's medal. In artifacts, where it belongs. The past is not a bear to wrestle daily. It is a story you tell with the lights on so it stops jumping out from under the bed. Sometimes, at the accelerator, a founder will corner me and ask the question they're really asking. How do I make them regret it? I say, you won't. Not in any way that matters. Make yourself proud instead. It takes longer. It lasts longer. I don't know if Rick will ever be the man I needed him to be when I was 30 with a cracked windshield and a phone full of proof. I know he is better than he was. I know I am too. The last thing Grandma wrote in her letter was this. When the day comes that you no longer need me to tell you you're enough, you'll hear me anyway. In the shed some mornings she is loud as birds. One evening I walked past the mirror and saw a man who had not been chosen by the room but had built a room anyway. I looked like someone whose phone might buzz and whose heart might not race. It did buzz. Amy. A photo of my shed at dusk, warm as an invitation. Looks like a life. She wrote. I typed back. It is. And if one day a boy unlocks his phone in a small apartment and sets a photo as his wallpaper because the world has told him its bets, I hope he meets a version of me who will tell him this. You owe them nothing but your work and your boundaries. Build anyway. Build from something steadier than spite. Build until the measure of your days has nothing to do with who is laughing on a leather couch and everything to do with where the light lands at noon. The wager that mattered is the one I keep making, that I can live well and kindly on my terms. That I can forgive without forgetting. That I can stop answering questions I didn't ask and start asking better ones. It pays out daily. Sometimes in cash. Mostly in mornings. That's the lesson. That's the ending. The rest is just interest.